Claire's palm rested on the deadbolt, not the door. The chain stayed hooked. Behind her shoulder, my son stared at the hardwood like it could save him from choosing me. My name is Lorraine Laurie Bennett. I am 69 years old, and on Monday, February 12th, 2024, my daughter-in-law told me I needed space to process and shouldn't step inside my own house. I walked down the porch with Samuel's boxes, hearing one soft click follow me in the dark. Before I tell you how that door closed, tell me where you're listening from tonight. If you've ever stood outside a place that used to be yours, you already know the weight of that silence. You can like this video if this kind of story hits close to home. And subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. Stay with me. Because I didn't argue on that porch. I went somewhere else instead. In 1986, 214 Juniper Avenue didn't look like much. The siding was faded. The porch leaned a little to the left, and the maple tree out front dropped sticky leaves that clung to your shoes. The realtor kept smiling too wide. "It has potential," she said. What she meant was, we were the only black family even considering it. Samuel stood in the living room with his hands on his hips, studying the ceiling like he was already calculating weight loads. I was 3 months pregnant with nothing but hope and a nursing job that barely covered groceries. The second week after we moved in, someone left a note under our windshield wiper. It said, "You don't belong here." Samuel read the first line, folded it once, and slid it into his back pocket. He didn't tear it up. He didn't say anything. That night, he carried a ladder into the kitchen and began sanding the walls. He painted the house himself. Warm earth tones in the living room, a soft gold in the hallway. I'd come home from long hospital shifts smelling like antiseptic and baby powder, and he'd still be in overalls, radio humming low, on Sundays. We started cooking more than we could eat. Collard greens simmering, cornbread cracking at the edges. Neighbors drifting in slow at first, then easier. By the end of that first year, Juniper Avenue knew our names. Samuel saved the kitchen wall for last. He sketched the outline in pencil at night when Marcus was asleep. A baobab tree stretching across plaster, tall grass beneath it, and in careful script, a line from Maya Angelou. It took him 3 months. I would stand in the doorway watching his wrist move, steady, precise. Marcus would sit cross-legged on the floor, handing him brushes like sacred tools. "Roots," Samuel said once, tapping the trunk of the painted tree. "We plant them deep, out back." He planted a magnolia. The soil was stubborn clay, and he worked it with a shovel until sweat soaked his collar. "When this blooms," he told Marcus, "we'll know we're staying." That tree grew taller every year, white blossoms against Tacoma gray skies. Proof that we had not been pushed out. I delivered babies at all hours, 2,731 by the time I retired. I held women while they screamed and prayed. I learned how to be calm in chaos. Samuel liked to say I could bring life into the world and then come home and make it feel safe. We built routines around dinner at the same wooden table, Marcus doing homework, Samuel telling stories about engineering projects, me correcting grammar and laughing when they both rolled their eyes. Then in April 2010, the kitchen went silent. Samuel was sitting at that same table with a mug of coffee. I heard the cup hit the floor before I saw him slump forward. The sound was wrong, thick, final. I remember my knees hitting tile, my hands pressing against his chest, counting compressions out loud. The metallic taste in my mouth from breathing too fast. Paramedics filled the room with bright jackets and equipment. But the mural watched us the whole time. The baobab tree stretching above chaos. He died before we reached the hospital. The funeral at church felt unreal. People lined up to tell me how strong I was. I nodded like strength was something you could borrow. The house afterward felt enormous. Every room echoed. I would pass the kitchen and stare at the wall where Samuel's paint still glowed. 2 months later, Marcus sat across from me at that same table. He was 29, working long hours, trying to sound grown. "Mom, we should add my name to the deed, just in case something happens." I barely heard the details. June 2010. A lawyer's office with beige walls. I signed where they pointed, Tenants in common. It sounded harmless, protective. I was still waking up reaching for a man who wasn't there. Years blurred. Marcus married Claire in October 2015. She was polished, organized, always adjusting something invisible. In early 2016, they asked if they could stay with me while they saved for their own place. Just a few months, Claire said. She walked through the house the first day with a notepad. The changes started small: new curtains, neutral paint samples taped to walls. It'll open the space up, she told me. Family photos came down one by one. Wedding pictures. Marcus as a toddler with paint on his cheeks. Samuel in his overalls beside the magnolia. We'll store them safely, she promised. One Saturday in the spring of 2016, I came home from the grocery store and smelled fresh paint. Claire stood in the kitchen with a roller, white-covered gold. The baobab tree disappeared under each pass. I froze in the doorway. Marcus leaned against the counter. It's just paint. Mom, he said, just paint. I watched the quote vanish, the grass. The careful lines Samuel had drawn while Marcus handed him brushes. The kitchen looked brighter when she finished. Cleaner, like it belonged to no one. From that day forward, the house felt different. Samuel's tools moved to the garage, his records packed away. The magnolia still bloomed outside, but inside, the walls stopped telling our story. Months stretched into years. Claire referred to it as our house. I corrected her once. She smiled and kept saying it. I stopped correcting. 3 years before that February, in 2024, I moved into a senior studio across town. 420 square feet, beige carpet, beige cabinets. I told Marcus I wanted to downsize. He looked relieved more than surprised. I took a few clothes and one framed photograph. The rest stayed in the attic and garage. I visited on Sundays, sat on furniture I didn't choose, ate meals that didn't taste like mine. Claire kept things tidy, controlled, safe. I became a guest in the place where I once planted roots. Brianna, my granddaughter, started at Howard University. She called me late one night asking about family history for a project. Grandma, do we have anything from Granddad Letter's photos? Her voice carried something I hadn't heard before. Hunger. Yes, I told her. It's in the attic, the next weekend. I climbed those stairs myself. Dust floated in the light from a small window. I found the boxes marked with Samuel's handwriting, tools, the family Bible, photographs, a manila envelope I didn't remember opening. I brushed off cobwebs and carried the boxes down one by one. When I rang the doorbell on February 12th, 2024, I wasn't coming as a guest. I was bringing history back into the living room. Claire opened the door halfway. And you already know what she said. Claire kept her hand on the doorknob like it was a lock she owned. Her voice stayed soft. We need space to process, Lori. It's better if you don't come inside until we think through boundaries. Marcus stood behind her in the hallway. He didn't look at me. He looked at the boxes in my arms. Bree asked for her granddad's things, I said. The cardboard pressed into my forearms. I brought them down. Claire's smile didn't move. You can't just go through storage. We're trying to keep the house calm. Our house, Marcus added. Quiet. I waited for him to correct it, to say my house, to say Dad's house. He stayed silent. The porch light buzzed. I see, I said. Not because I understood, but because arguing on my own porch felt like asking permission to exist. I carried the boxes back down the steps, one at a time. The door closed before I reached my car. My studio apartment was 420 square feet of beige and hum. I set Samuel's boxes on my little table and stared at the tape with his name written in my handwriting. Then I opened the manila envelope from the attic. Inside were papers with Samuel's signature and a notary stamp. I didn't call Marcus. I made tea. Then I pulled out every document I still had the deed change from June 2010. Old mortgage statements, tax records, and receipts I'd kept out of habit. The papers spread across my table. Numbers calm me. They don't pretend. The deed said tenants in common. Marcus's name beside mine, half on paper. Even though Samuel's hands built the bones. I traced the words with my finger until my nail caught on the page. Sunday after church. I handed the tote bag to Denise Carter. She flipped through it in the side room that smelled like old hymnals and lemon cleaner. Start from the porch, she said. So I did. The therapy voice. The way Marcus stared at his shoes. The mural wiped out with paint. Denise listened and kept turning pages. When she reached the papers from the envelope, she stopped. Her finger tapped the notary line. "Samuel left you life estate rights," she said. "Plain as weather." My mouth went dry. "Say that again. You control the property while you're alive," she said. "You can live there. You can sell it. Marcus being on the deed doesn't cancel this." Relief hit first. Then something hotter. Samuel had been protecting me while I was still trusting our son. Denise stacked the papers and squared the edges like she was squaring my spine. "If you want your dignity back," she said, "we put this on record. Then we move with paperwork, not feelings." On Wednesday, I met Malcolm Pierce downtown. Navy suit, straight posture. He asked about the magnolia tree, the kitchen, the wall that used to speak. What was there, he asked. "A baobab tree," I said, and words Samuel painted like he meant them. Malcolm nodded once. "That matters." 4 days after the porch. We walked through 214 Juniper Avenue. I'd left Marcus one voicemail. "A realtor is coming. Don't be there." The house was empty. Malcolm moved room to room, taking photos. In the kitchen, he stopped at the smooth white wall. "They covered it," he said. "3 coats," I answered. I signed the listing papers in Malcolm's office. Friday morning, the listing went up. At 9:14 a.m., Marcus called. I let it ring twice before I answered. "What is this?" he said. "No hello. No mom. Just fear." "It's a listing for 214 Juniper," I said. "You can't do that. My name is on the deed." "It is," I said. "And Samuel's papers are on file now. Call Denise Carter if you want explanations." Claire's voice sliced through the background. "Tell her to take it down." Marcus tried a softer tone, like he was borrowing it. "Mom, please, we live here. Bree grew up here. Bree grew up in a house that forgot her grandfather," I said. "You let that happen." Silence. Then a small broken sound. "Can we talk like family?" "Family didn't stop her at the door," I said, and ended the call. He showed up at my apartment before lunch. Hair uncombed, eyes red. He stepped inside and looked around like the smallness embarrassed him. "You've been living here?" he asked. "For 3 years," I said. He stared at the narrow bed visible through the doorway. "Why didn't you tell me it was this tiny?" "You never asked," I said. He sat with his head in his hands. "Ashley didn't mean stop," I said. "She rolled paint over your father. You said it was just paint." His jaw tightened. I was trying to keep things peaceful. Peaceful for who I asked. He looked at the boxes on my table, Samuel's name still taped to the top. I didn't think it mattered that much. That sentence hurt more than the porch. Not because it was cruel, because it was true. The next day, Claire came alone with a canvas bag clutched to her chest. She emptied it on my table, Samuel's mug, photos, a couple tools, and a folder of letters addressed to Marcus in Samuel's handwriting. "He never read them," she whispered. "He told me to throw them out." My throat tightened. "And you didn't." Claire shook her head. "I kept them. I told myself I was making the house neutral, safe." I opened the folder. The paper smelled like attic dust and time. I didn't read the letters yet. I just held them. Felt the weight of a husband who'd tried to speak even after he was gone. Claire waited for me to say something that would make her feel clean again. I didn't. I stared at the closed folder and thought about Marcus standing behind her on my porch, letting her decide who belonged. The hurt didn't flare this time. It settled, heavy, permanent. The conference room at Malcolm Pierce's office smelled faintly of fresh coffee and printer ink. A long glass table cut the space in half, outside the windows. Tacoma looked gray and undecided. Inside, everything felt sharp. Marcus sat across from me, Claire beside him, hands folded too neatly in her lap, Bree at the far end, spine straight, eyes alert. Denise Carter laid a slim folder in front of her. Malcolm stood near the window. Across from us were Dr. Renee Holloway, Earl Jackson, and May Chen from the Black Cultural Heritage Foundation. Dr. Holloway began without small talk. "We're not here to buy a property," she said. "We're here to preserve testimony." She clicked a remote. Renderings appeared on the wall screen. 214 Juniper Avenue restored, the magnolia tree preserved, The kitchen wall reconstructed with the baobab mural, recreated from photographs Bree had found in an old album. A room labeled Bennett House. Samuel's tools displayed behind glass. The family Bible centered under soft light. Claire inhaled sharply. Earl Jackson leaned forward. "Homes like this disappear," he said, "renovated beyond recognition." "We don't want that to happen here." Bree wiped at her eyes but didn't look away from the screen. Dr. Holloway shifted to the next slide. A scholarship fund in Samuel Bennett's name. A community health initiative focusing on cancer screenings for Black men in Tacoma. Marcus's jaw tightened at that. "This house carries a story." Dr. Holloway continued, "It deserves to speak." Marcus cleared his throat. "With respect. My name is on the deed." The room quieted. Denise opened her folder. She didn't rush. She placed a single document on the table and turned it so Marcus could see Samuel's signature and the notary seal. "This is a codicil signed by Samuel Bennett prior to his death," she said. "It establishes a life estate for Mrs. Bennett at 214 Juniper Avenue." Marcus blinked. "What does that mean?" "It means," Denise replied, voice steady, "your mother retains full control of the property while she is alive. She may occupy it. She may sell it. Your name on the deed does not override this." Claire's posture shifted. "We never knew about that." Denise met her gaze. "It was in Mr. Bennett's personal papers. It is legally binding." The air changed. Marcus stared at the paper as if it might move. "So I don't have a say. You have feelings," I said. "But I have authority." The words felt colder than I expected. They also felt clean. Bree reached into her bag and placed one of Samuel's letters on the table. "Granddad warned you," she said quietly to her father. "He wrote about erasing yourself." Marcus didn't pick it up. His hands trembled slightly. Dr. Holloway spoke again. "Our offer is straightforward. We purchase the home. We preserve the magnolia. We restore the mural. We create the Bennett House as a cultural center." Mei Chen slid architectural sketches forward. The kitchen wall reimagined, but not neutral, not erased. Marcus looked at me then. Really looked. "Mom, is this what you want?" I held his gaze. I wanted to walk through my own door without asking. "That's gone." Silence pressed down. Claire whispered, "We thought we were making it better. You made it blank," Bree said. Marcus swallowed hard. "If we agree to this, what happens to us?" I folded my hands on the table. "You sit on the board." I said to Marcus, "You help tell your father's story instead of hiding it." Claire volunteers with the foundation. Bree's documentary becomes part of the opening exhibit. The house doesn't belong to us anymore. It belongs to the community. Marcus looked back at the codicil, at Samuel's signature. For a long moment, no one spoke. The hum of the air vent filled the space. Then Marcus nodded once. Slow. "Okay," he said. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. But it shifted everything. Denise slid the sale agreement across the glass table. I picked up the pen. My hand didn't shake. When I signed my name, it wasn't revenge. It was reclamation. Marcus watched the ink dry. Claire stared at the rendering of the mural that would return to the kitchen wall. Outside, the gray sky didn't change. Inside, the power did. When the papers were signed at the end of May 2024, I didn't feel triumph. I felt steady. Denise handed me a certified copy of the codicil and the finalized sale documents. The notary seal caught the light for a second before I slid the folder into my bag. Malcolm shook my hand. Dr. Holloway thanked me like I'd given her something precious. Maybe I had. Marcus stood a few feet away, thinner than he used to be. Chemotherapy had carved him down to bone and apology. Claire kept her hand on his back. Not possessive this time. Supportive. "Mom," Marcus said, voice low. "I'll show up, I promise." "I know," I replied. I didn't soften it. Promises mean more when they're earned. The Bennett house would open on the anniversary of Samuel's death the following year. The magnolia would stay. Mei Chen had already scheduled the restoration of the kitchen wall. The baobab tree would rise again, not as a private memory, but as a public witness. Bree's documentary would play in the main room, looping through our story in her own voice. The foundation drafted plans for the Samuel Bennett Scholarship and the Community Health Initiative. Cancer screenings, outreach at local churches, Conversations in barbershops. Marcus agreed to speak once he was strong enough. His remission wasn't guaranteed yet, but it was possible. That word felt like a fragile gift. Claire began logging volunteer hours the week after closing. She organized archival photos, labeling them carefully, her handwriting small and deliberate. She didn't ask me for forgiveness. She didn't need to. Work would say more. I moved into a small bungalow 3 blocks from Juniper, close enough to walk, far enough to breathe, the first evening there. I planted rosemary by the steps and pressed the soil down with my palms. I kept one thing from the boxes, not the Bible, not the tools. A single paintbrush Samuel used on the mural. The bristles were stiff with age. I set it on my windowsill. Some doors close quietly. Others reopen in ways you never expect. If you've stayed with me this far, thank you. Stories like this don't end with a slammed door. They end with choices. I'd love to know where you're listening from, and what you would have done standing on that porch. Would you have argued? Would you have walked away? Or would you have reached for the paperwork? The way I did. If this kind of family truth matters to you, you can subscribe and stay with these conversations as they unfold. Not for drama, for clarity. Because here's the part I'm still sitting with. Marcus hasn't read the last line of Samuel's final letter out loud in front of me. He says he will. He says soon. And sometimes. Healing waits in the words we're still afraid to speak.